Hi, I'm Dr. Sean Allen with Wanna Get Fast, WANNAGETFAST, which we've partnered up with Chris Corfist and Dan Fichter at Wanna Get Fast and Slow Guide Speed Schools, and also my partner and writing partner and clinical partner out in Colorado, Dr. Ivo Werlap. We've put together this book, Pedographs, Mapping, and Gait Analysis. We've also put together a newsletter service. You can go to our website, Homunculus Group, HOMUNCULUS group.com, where you can get some of our free podcasts and free newsletters, as well as on the Wanna Get Fast site, where you can see the work that Chris and Dan are doing with us on some of the blogs and some of the great athletic and personal training information that we're trying to put together to try and stay ahead of the research game. So in this video here, this one we're going to follow up on a foot type that's called a forefoot varus. There's really no such thing as a normal foot where the rear foot and the forefoot are both on the same plane. In this case here and in this picture, when the rear foot and the forefoot are on the same plane, the tibia is vertical and the foot stays, even without muscular support, in a neutral position. Forefoot varus is a unique foot type and where the rear foot and the forefoot are on a different plane. The forefoot is slightly on a plane of a varus position where it's tilted upwards. So the net position of the forefoot is on a plane on an angle this way, whereas the rear foot is still put down. The forefoot varus type is related in some degree to a rear foot varus form of rear foot positioning, but we're going to talk about that in another video. Right now we're just going to talk about the forefoot varus. In the forefoot varus position, and we have a follow-up video here which will be entitled Forefoot Varus number 2. This will be Forefoot Varus number 1. It's going to go into a little more in depth into the pathology behind this and the mechanics, but this one's going to stay simple and you can build on it in the second one. In order to get this person's foot on the ground, when they're progressing from heel strike, there's striking on the lateral forefoot and trying to come down. Remember, this forefoot is torsioned a little bit more. So as they come across, the normal tibial position as the forefoot, the first ray hits the ground, the tibia should be relatively neutral, then allowing for heel rise and forefoot progression. But in a forefoot varus, this being tipped a little bit further, where the first ray is in a little more of what we call dorsiflexion. In other words, having troubles getting into the plantar flex position to get the first toe down, or the first MPJ, or metatarsal phalangeal joint as we refer to it as. Whenever I say MPJ, that's metatarsal phalangeal joint. So there's a head of the first metatarsal, and there's a base. And we want to try and plantar flex the base and lift the base and plantar flex the head to try and get the first toe down. People with a forefoot varus pathology are more tipped in this position, so they would have to go into an extreme range in order to do that, which is not possible. So what happens is they're progressing their foot from heel strike down onto the ground and they're getting ready to come across. They have to come that much further to get this first head down. You'll notice that the tibia is inside now, creating a genu valgum, or at the knee is in a valgus position. Okay, it's created an L shape. So what happens is these people will end up having to prone much further and much harder. It can predispose bunion formation, hammer toes, and whatnot. So the foot basically starts to pronate much further than normal in a forefoot varus pathology. There's a lot of weaknesses that are related to this forefoot problem. The tib posterior and tib anterior are typically weak, which come down, attaching into the plantar and the dorsal aspects of the first ray complex. And there's also some weakness typically of the extensor hallucis brevis and extensor mechanism. So this foot has basically troubles getting that first met down into plantar flexion. And so all of the muscles that create that plantar flexion motion are typically weak. You can try and strengthen them to rectify this, or you can add some postings underneath. A posting is something that you would take on an orthotic or on an insert, and you would put a piece of cork ground down on an angle, which we will probably show in some subsequent videos, where that part of the insert is actually elevated. So in other words, you're going to bring the ground up to that first metatarsal to get their brain and foot to think that the ground has been engaged earlier. That will stop the amount of inward drop on the foot. So in other words, if they're dropping through and we create a raised artificial ground here, they won't have to come in as far because something has lifted this up, allowing them to come forward as opposed to coming further inside. So that's the forefoot varus in a nutshell. Basically, the rear foot and the forefoot are on two different planes. The forefoot plane is slightly elevated. A lot of the textbooks and research think that this is a congenital malformation of the talus, failure to continue to rotate and derotate. Some of the research suggests that it's a failure of the rear foot mechanism to create enough flexibility, so the rear foot is more rigid, not allowing that initial tip to occur to get them over to the inside. So in order to compensate, they've had to roll further. But we'll go into that in a little more detail in the rear foot varus foot type. So that, in a nutshell, is your forefoot varus. Certainly there's a lot more to it, and we'll create some more in detailed DVDs for this later on.